Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Today's show is all about preparation, and hopefully not about PreparationH. Preparation is the first step in an effective interview process, and preparation needs to happen for both parties. Just showing up with an idea of where you are going to go, or where you are going to go, is the quickest way to lose an opportunity. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. You know who said that, Mark?
Peter Drucker.
Ooh, close. Benjamin Franklin. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to share insights from top performing entrepreneurs and industry experts. Every week, we provide proven tactical solutions to solve your company's toughest hiring challenges. Today, our guest is Mark James, the founder and president of Hire Consulting Services. Mark is also the author of a new book, which we have here, The Keys to the C-Suite. Mark's a certified personnel consultant and has been providing executive career transition coaching and executive search consulting services for over 20 years. Hey, you're like me. You've been doing it way too long, huh?
That's right.
He's also a certified partner with Predictive Index, and he coaches executives in career transition on a daily basis, which makes him an expert in today's topic. Mark, thank you for joining us today on the Higher Power Radio Show.
Good to be here, Rick.
Absolutely. So we're going to discuss a few things, the importance of preparation and how it needs to happen, both for the interviewee, the interviewer, the hiring manager, and on the back end of the show, we're going to provide a process on how each party needs to prepare. Sound like fun?
Sounds like a winner.
All right, we're in. So why? Let's start with the why, which is where I always like to follow Simon Sinek. So why is it important to prepare for an interview?
Well, if you go in there unprepared, you're going to be obviously not chosen as the final candidate. If you don't know enough about the company and you assume that you think you know everything they do, the products, the services, the latest and greatest, then you're just not prepared. I always say that you should be so prepared that you know something about the company that they don't even know about the company.
Absolutely. So it's important on both ends, I think, because number one, it puts you in the right mindset. Right?
Absolutely.
It also sets the tone and helps you to eliminate the surprises at the end of the process. It doesn't put you in a position where you're like, what happened?
Right.
Right?
Right. I mean, you're more confident, you're more enthusiastic when you've done your research. And that's what the internet is a wonderful thing for. You can do a Google alert on the owner of the company or the leader of the business, and you can find out anything you need. I mean, go on LinkedIn, look at their profiles, look at everyone that you're going to be meeting and study their background.
Yep. All right, you're giving away the how-to, though, so let's get into that later. But I really want to make sure that people understand the importance of why you want to prepare for something first before you go in, especially an interview. An interview is important to the interviewee, but it's also just as important, especially with the current job, the unemployment conditions being so low, that employers give themselves a competitive advantage in making sure that they're attracting the right people as well.
Right, and it's competitive out there. And,
oh, yeah.
You know, if you're not prepared and you don't know enough about the company, well, the company is either going to hire somebody else or they're going to promote somebody internally.
Yeah.
Which is very common today because there are a lot of people that want the job that you're interviewing for.
Yeah. And on the flip side, there's a lot of people that want that candidate.
Absolutely.
So people don't stick around very long, especially if they're good.
Right.
So being prepared also equals being impressive, and it demonstrates that you're successful.
Exactly.
And people want to hire success. All right. So, you mentioned Google, which is always a really fun thing for me. When I prepare for the show, I Google everything too. And I came up with probably about 50 articles that were how to prepare, steps to prepare yourself for a job interview.
Right.
And some of them were laughable, but some of them actually had some pretty good insight. But let's kind of narrow it down to really what your role as a candidate should be if you're preparing.
Right. Well, first of all, you've got a resume, you've got a LinkedIn profile. You better know it backwards and forwards.
Sure.
knowing I would say your top 8 greatest accomplishments in your career, which are usually illustrated as bullets on your resume. You better know the whole storyboard on how to tell that story when asked. So when someone says, tell me about your most significant accomplishment, if you're not prepared to give them an answer probably in a minute to a minute and a half without rambling, and go through the challenge, the action, and the result of that story.
Yeah.
If you're not ready, your competition will eat you up.
Yep, absolutely. So we had a conversation prior. We talked about your thoughts behind it, which was the Inspector Clouseau.
Yeah, or Columbo.
Columbo. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, we're going a little. Yeah.
I'm going way back.
Peter
there,
Sellers has been gone for a while. So is Peter Falk, by the
Yeah.
way. They're funny names. They're both Peter.
I know, right?
And then we already talked about Peter Drucker, but that's another story. Yeah, I think it's important. You're like a detective in a murder mystery. Okay,
Yeah.
You need to ask compelling questions when you're in an interview.
Yeah.
A great question would be, here's the short version. What does this person need to do to be successful? Right? Wait for an answer. A long version of that question is, can you please give me 5 or 6 critical deliverables that the person that gets this job that he or she would need to do in the next 6 to 12 months? You need to find out what's wrong. You're almost like a doctor and the hiring manager is a patient.
Sure.
Find out where the struggle, the pain, the issues, the obstacles, what's not working, what didn't the previous person do in the role that he or she needed to do and would have made you happy. You know, obviously these are all great, compelling questions, and you are judged very closely on the questions you ask.
Sure. And that's when we're in the interview, but like just backing up for the preparation piece, right? So if you're you should write down those questions.
Absolutely.
And make sure that you're bringing them with you, right?
And bring them with,
Yeah.
preparing.
I think the biggest faux pas that most people can make when they come and do an interview is come in bringing a notebook that they're going to take notes on, but not have pre-written questions.
That's right. A big mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to remember everything to ask? And what the timing is on some of these questions as the conversation naturally progresses through the interview.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to skip to the chase on what you should ask as the final question, but let's bring that up.
Okay, we'll do that at the end.
As the interview is winding down, I've got a great question.
Okay,
So,
sounds good. Asking for the interview schedule
Yep.
and the format of how the interview is going to run
Yep.
on the candidate side, I think is crucial.
right, there's
You want to have a really good idea of who you're going to talk to and who when. I would Facebook and LinkedIn stalk them and get an idea of who these people are. So if you can find some commonality,
right.
that's always a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, having things in common or agreeing with strategy or mission or the position the company's in and what kind of market they're going after. I mean, you know, one of the preparation mindsets that I coach is be a buyer, not a seller in the beginning, meaning you don't know whether you want to work for the company yet until you get enough information and green light information from the hiring authority.
Sure.
So you're preparing questions in advance. You know what you want to try to discuss when you have that opportunity.
Sure.
And then have a 50-50 conversation. I believe, you know, the 80-20 either way can really sabotage the interview.
Well, you know, I found when you ask a lot of behavioral related questions, that tends to go pretty deep. But flip the script.
Right.
It's okay to ask the interviewer the same question.
Be a buyer, not a seller.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I think it should be 50-50. I mean, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Hey, it's a tight market. Companies are going to be lucky to get good quality people.
Yes.
And, you know, this is a great time for you to interview the company.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I mean, ask the tough question if you feel up to it. You know, think to yourself, why would somebody want to work here? I mean, that's bold. But
I wouldn't say think to myself, I'd ask.
yeah.
I mean, it's not being bold. That's a question in your mind. Ask it.
I always say, try not to let the hiring authority think you need them more than they need you. I think that can hurt you. I'm not saying play hard to get or act like you don't want the job, but you need to ask neutral type questions. I say this like you need to pretend you're a human Switzerland. Okay, a neutral,
Okay.
but you know, like what does he or she need to do to be successful? You're not saying what do I need to do to be successful.
Okay. So let's flip this on the hiring manager, because this is where I think companies drop the ball big time.
Right.
So what ends up happening is somebody shows up for an interview, the person's fumbling around looking at the resume, trying to figure out what questions they're going to ask. So
Happens all the time.
I always coach my hiring managers, guess what? You're going to interview for the white space. I don't even want you looking at the resume. We've already looked at all that in the pre-interview. Like if we've done everything already planned, set up, don't revert to asking about salary. Don't do all those questions that you should have already had done. Do all the important things when you have that person face to face. Right? So you should research the person. Again, you should know that that candidate's researching you. So spend a few moments, plan out your time, and 10 to 15 minutes is all you really need to get yourself up to speed with who this person is and what you're going to talk about.
I mean, Rick, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of hiring managers out there that wing it.
Oh, yeah.
And they ask questions.
Far too many wing it.
Yeah, I mean, probably 75%. They think
I
they
would
can.
say closer to 90.
90.
And you know what? Myself included. I was in that for a long time, too.
Right.
You know?
But, if they need to be just as prepared to execute or conduct a quality interview so that they can come away with really good, solid knowledge about who is in front of them that is applying or interested in working for their company.
Hey, you know what's funny is Predictive Index, I learned from Predictive Index that essentially an unstructured interview process only produces about a 6% chance of making a good hire.
That's exactly right.
All right, so you not preparing is part of not having a structured interview process.
Right.
So, hey, your competitors will love it if you wing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is for good candidates to be considered, they need to be vetted out, okay? Yeah. And they want to be vetted out, okay? If you do softball questions and they're giving you, and they walk away think this is the easiest interview I've ever been on, they don't really understand what you're capable of doing.
No, and they're not going to be impressed to want to join your organization either.
Exactly.
So this leads us into the dangers of not prepping for the interview, right? Because you're creating a scenario where basically if you've got a really solid performer, they're not going to be interested in joining your company.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, A companies deserve A candidates, right?
Yeah.
A B company, be lucky to get an A candidate. They're probably looking at other Bs and Cs, if you know what I mean by that.
But if you're a B company, you can always present like an A and you can elevate the talent.
Right.
And that's what most companies usually fall into. There's very few A companies out there.
Right. The B companies are the ones that are trying to become an A company, and they need to hire great people.
But they still have a D interview process.
That's right. Yeah, grade D is right. Maybe even F.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm being optimistic by giving them a D.
Yeah.
All right, so wasted time. I mean, the worst thing you could do is have somebody leave your interview feel like they wasted their time.
Right. From the candidate point of view, if he or she's not asked good quality questions, like tell me about a time when you did this.
Yeah.
And it's based on a corporate objective that the hiring manager needs to have this person achieve during the course of a 6 to 12 month a period of employment. Mm-hmm. And if the question is asked and the preparation is weak and the person isn't prepared with a good story or an example, this is the behavioral style questions, and then the interviewer, the hiring manager, doesn't even ask questions that will elicit these kinds of stories, well, then the interview goes nowhere.
Well, you know what? So they'll start sometimes asking the question, but they won't delve deeper. Like if you open the hood, get into the engine and find out what's going on, right?
Right.
You'll find that, okay, I've had so many hiring managers that have come to me in the past and said, wow, this guy totally surprised us. He was really good. We want to hire him.
Right.
And then you call the candidate up and he goes, nah, I'm not interested. Have you had that happen to you?
Absolutely.
Before?
Why isn't the person interested is because as a person, as a recruiter, our job is to qualify, just like it is with the hiring manager.
Well, also, and the hiring manager basically gave him a D performance.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're talking to Mark James, the founder and president of Hire Consulting Services and author to the new book, Keys to the C-Suite. And we'll be right back.
You're listening to Hire Power with Rick Girard, giving you access to recruiting techniques that will help you hire key talent to build your company towards real success. Rick is a recruiting executive and entrepreneur who's been successfully recruiting in the aggressive Silicon Valley technology landscape for the past 2 decades. After a very successful stint at Apogee, he founded Stride Search in 2012. Based on a lean efficiency model, Stride has uniquely positioned itself as a leader in retained search for the most critical talent hires within a small organization. Whether you're a startup executive or recruiting professional, by listening to Hire Power with Rick Girard, you will walk away with skills to help you attract and hire great talent. Now back to Hire Power with Rick Girard.
Welcome back to the Hire Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and our guest today is Mark James, the author of the new book, Keys to the C-Suite, also the founder of and president of Hire Consulting Services. So we just discussed kind of the ins and outs of why you need to prepare for an interview. Now we're going to provide you a roadmap of how to prepare for an interview. So let's take it from how to best prepare to get hired, right? This is where you're an expert, so I'm going to lean on you on this one.
Well, if you don't know your greatest talents, your highest and best use, in other words, what do you do better?
Well, where do you start first?
I mean, you got to get ready and you got to know what your skills are.
Sure. Okay.
Assess yourself, or take an assessment and understand what your drives, needs, and behaviors are.
So understanding yourself.
Yeah. I mean, Socrates said it. The ultimate power is to know thyself.
And you're quoting Socrates. I love it.
There you go. He's one of my all-time heroes.
Let's go.
I wish I knew him.
Yeah, you and I both.
But, being ready and getting to a point where you go in and you're confident, enthusiastic, and you walk away from an interview after you've done this and you say, I couldn't have done a better job.
Yeah.
And you now are leaving it up to the hiring authority to make that choice based on your best foot forward. And, that's how things happen. And then likability, how well you get along, and can I work with this person for the next, 2-3 years and not hate it.
All right, so we're starting with the self-assessment.
Yep.
And then where do we go?
Well, knowing your top 8 stories and examples, we've talked about that a little bit. These are illustrated as bullets on your resume. Make sure you can tell each one of these in a very succinct way, almost like when an interview question comes your way, you are like a human jukebox, and you're able to pull one of your stories out and answer it accordingly, directly towards the question. So one of my favorite questions is, hey, Rick, you're interviewing against 3 or 4 other people that are exactly like you. Same degree, same earnings, same background experience, same education. Why should we hire you over the other 3 candidates?
I have better hair.
Yeah. I mean, this is a make or break type answer.
Sure.
And if you're good and you know who you are and you're confident and you do it without, a little too much ego on the shoulder, then you're going to be perceived as someone who gets it.
Yeah.
And is potentially valuable to the company.
Okay, so we're at self-assessment. Then you're kind of learning. You're reviewing how to present yourself.
Right.
What's next?
Actually, it's going to be a 50-50 conversation. You need to be prepared to talk about real questions that you have for the company.
So researching the company.
Knowing the company as well as you possibly can. Asking questions about the future. Where are they going? Remember, you're a buyer, not a seller, and you want to know what's happening. What's the plans that are going to really help this company grow, and who else is on board that's going to help that vision be achieved?
And how can you help them get there?
And how can I, as a candidate for this job, get you there? And what my role would be. Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, so you researched the company, asking targeted questions, showcasing your accomplishments. Now what?
I mean, your final...
Connecting the dots?
Well, having a good, comfortable conversation, not easy to do.
Okay.
I kind of help people program themselves by getting the right type of mindset.
Sure.
And, going
What
in...
is the right type of mindset?
Well, you want to know everything you can in a short period of time, and they want to know everything about you. In a 1-hour interview, it's pretty difficult to do that. The more relaxed you can be, the more, there are a lot of nervous Neds and Nellies when they get into an interview.
Oh yeah,
so
it's not a comfortable situation.
You can get judged improperly if you're nervous, you're unprepared, you don't have an answer that matches up with what the question is, and that can really reflect badly on you. Yet you could be the perfect candidate for the job, but you just weren't on your game that day.
So, but what's going to alleviate that is going to be preparation. If you
Absolutely.
prepare,
Yep.
you're going to get rid of some of those
It's
nerves.
back to the old prep.
Well, there we go. I have a great quote we're going to end this thing with. All right, so looking at the company side, because this is the piece that I probably play in quite a bit, which is I've found that companies really don't take the time to prep people or be prepped for the people. So it's the company's responsibility, in my opinion, to both prep and be prepped.
Right.
Right. So they should be helping the candidate to prep for the interview, especially in this environment. If you load them up with what's going to happen, who they're going to meet, and what kind of questions to expect.
Right.
You know, behavioral questions tend to be where a lot of companies are going. Hey, companies, I got a note for you. If you are asking the traditional questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And maybe, what do you consider your strongest strengths and weaknesses? And describe your work style. You're going to get canned answers. So you might want to consider, if you're not using behavioral questions, developing behavioral questions that are geared toward your company values.
Here's a great question. For a hiring manager, let's say that person is the COO, Chief Operating Officer. They have to hire an operations manager. The question would be from the hiring manager to the candidate. You're the COO, and you have to hire an operations manager.
Sure.
Why would you hire you? Why would you hire you? That should, in ideal situation, the candidate would know him or herself
Sure.
well enough to be able to use passion and conviction and say something like, I would hire me because I believe I've got the right education, background, and experience to come in, learn the system, learn the problems, understand what works and what has been tried and what doesn't work, and be able to assess the whole plan in order to get to the point where we have objectives are met. And certainly this is the beginning of a conversation as to how companies have done well in the past and how they've done poorly.
Yeah, most definitely. So being organized is a big part of this.
Yes.
Right? So making sure that you prepare your interview team.
Yep.
One of the things that I coach and I bring into a lot of the companies that we work with is we're going to split up the interview process to where each person is going to be responsible for asking predetermined questions. They're going to be based upon different aspects of the company culture that are important, and they're also going to bring to light the behaviors of that person and how well they perform in their current job and how that's transferable to their next job.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that's really, really important that people don't prepare about is, again, they wing it. Now we're at a situation where, hey, Bob, can you go talk to this guy? We have him in the interview room. Here's his resume.
Right.
So taking 10 to 15 minutes with your team and making sure they're prepared and they're organized and they understand what they should be asking is both really impressive and necessary in this current job climate.
Right. The hiring process from every company from one to the next is always different. I always try to encourage any candidate, ask what is the hiring process? What are the natural steps
Sure.
that the company takes in order to qualify and interview a candidate?
Yeah.
And it's a fair question to ask because now at least you know what the steps are and how well you're doing based on you graduating to the next step, the next person that you'll be meeting, etc.
But the trick is, really talking to the companies and trying to help them figure out how to refine their process.
Right.
Because most hiring processes are pretty just, again, haphazardly
Very generic.
put together.
Yeah.
They're based off of, hey, you know what? They take their interview questions and their interview process back from when they were delivering pizzas back in college,
Yeah.
right? That interview was based around, hey, do you have a car? What skills do you bring to the table? No matter what kind of role you're interviewing for, you need to have something that takes people out of those pre-planned answers.
Right. The linear job description that was created 10 years ago is not really what you should base your interviews on.
No, not at all.
It should be on real chores, real objectives, real goals, and that's the kind of questions that behavioral style questions should be able to uncover in the ideal candidate. If the candidate is prepared, they should be able to say, I was faced with that exact type of problem in the past. May I give you an example or a suggestion as to how I would go about handling this particular task should I be given this opportunity.
There you go. All right, so let's just kind of give a little quick wrap up on the candidate side. Prepare.
Yes.
Like, what are the steps you recommend to a candidate to prepare for an interview?
Right. I mean, obviously, getting ready, executing, asking good questions, being ready to answer all kinds of situational questions that are coming your way, because you're very knowledgeable about your strengths, your highest and best use, and you're ready to ask the critical question to get them talking, them being the hiring manager, about real tasks, real goals, and objectives.
Okay. So self-assessment, knowing thyself,
Right?
researching the company,
Absolutely.
and presenting yourself well.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier I had one question that you could ask as a candidate to the
All right.
hiring manager.
Drop it.
Yeah,
Let's hear it.
Here it is. So right before the end of the interview, the hiring manager typically says, do you have any more questions before we finish up? You always say, yes, I have another question. Do not say, no, you've answered all my questions. Repeat, do not say no.
Yeah.
Say, first of all, preface saying, I want to thank you for your time. I've learned a lot about you and the company. My question is, do you have any concerns about my abilities to perform this job extremely well?
Ooh, boom. I have a different way of asking that, the same question,
Yep.
which is there any reason why you wouldn't hire me for this role?
Wow, it's a lot more direct. I like it.
Totally bold.
Yeah, totally bold.
But hey, look at it. It breaks you out. And on the flip side, ask the candidate, is there any reason why you wouldn't accept a position with us right now?
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a business to get agreement.
Yeah.
And that's all we do.
Yeah.
I mean, every day we're trying to come to an agreement and help one another and be profitable and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, on the company side, schedule time to prep.
Yep.
Prepare your team and yourself. Review your assessment notes, like review your LinkedIn profiles, review everything that all the data that you've gotten. Don't ask questions about salary and simple questions. That should have all
Have
been
a
taken.
uniform group of questions that everybody will understand and ask with every candidate.
Yep, and process. Performance metrics. Be able to explain in detail out what your expectations are in that interview process for that person to be successful in that role. Having that plan. And then a key thing that I see we miss a lot on is connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have this great interaction. Make sure that person, both the candidate and the employer, know this is how I connect. You know, they may not see it, but it's your job as the interviewer, it's your job as the interviewee to make sure that you're connecting the dots for the other person.
Absolutely.
And then give feedback. Give and get feedback, which is like what that last question is designed to do.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a setup question because you could get one of two answers. One answer could be, you know, Mark or Rick, I really like you as a candidate. We think you're going to be a possibly very good contributor to our group.
Yeah.
Okay, and you say, great, where do we go from here? Or the other side of that question answer could be, I've got a concern, and you've got, and they tell you what that concern is. You have one more chance now to alleviate the concern before you walk out the door.
Absolutely. You should never let people leave with concerns.
That's exactly right.
Boom. Great way to end up the show. So we're just about out of time. Mark, thanks for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, how do people reach you?
Hireconsulting.com,
Okay.
HIRE consulting.com.
And how do they find your book?
My book is on Amazon. It's currently at $10.97.
Woo.
And you can
That's
get
a
it
steal.
get a Kindle download for $7.97. But I've got a lot of international people are picking it up over in
Sweet.
China, Japan, and UK.
Yeah, we have international listeners now, too. It's
That's-
been
yeah.
fantastic.
It's been doing really well, and things are great. It's the first book I ever wrote, and it's doing well, and I'm really proud of it. It's like having a baby. You know?
Awesome. All right, I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer, Paul Roberts, woohoo, Our producers, Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Kim Iverson. Woohoo! Today's a woohoo day. If you like our show, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your input is welcome and needed to improve the show content. Join our community at Hire, that's HirePowerRadio.com, or subscribe to Higher Power Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, YouTube, and really every other podcast channel out there. You can follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook at Higher Power Radio Show, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, at Rick Girard1. Tune in next week. Our guest is going to be Meredith Fish. She's the Director of Talent Management for Alteryx. Really excited to have her. She's awesome. So I want to end this one with a quote, since we're talking about preparation. I'm going to let you guess this one again, too, Mark. I want, you were born to win, but to be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win.
I'm drawing a blank.
Zig Ziglar.
Zig Ziglar, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Listening to the best.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard on OC Talk Radio.
I'm on the observation deck of the Empire State Building to demonstrate how much material Waste Management recycles. As North America's largest residential recycler, last year alone, Waste Management recycled 12.9 million tons. How much is that? Let's do the math. Carry the 6. It's enough to fill this building more than 27 times. With experience like that, we're bound to have a program that can help your business recycle. Talk to Waste Management or visit thinkgreen.com.